If you've been stuck doing endless drills and stretches for your ankle might need some more active range of motion and not more passive stretching. In this video, I'm going to show you a couple of exercises you can try out for your ankle to see if you can improve the quality of your movements and also to see if you could directly improve the range of motion and capacity of your ankle joint. So for the assessments of the ankle, what we want to start with is we want to get some kind of an object or a wall in front of us. The absolute minimum you should have, the minimum amount of range of motion you should aim for is when you put a fist in between your big toe and the wall. Then from there, without putting excessive weight onto your left ankle, you're going to try to reach forward and see if you can comfortably reach the wall in front of you without letting the knee cave in or without having the heel lift off the floor while going forward. Now, ideally, for most weightlifting bearing activities, we want to have a bit more dorsiflexion than this. So what we want to do for that, to test that, is use a wrist and also extend our thumb. And then once again, put this in between our big toe and the box or wall in front of us. And then again, without putting excessive weight onto the left ankle, I'm going to see if I can reach the box or wall in front of me without letting the back heel of my front foot lift off the floor. Another thing we might want to look out for, which a lot of people usually deal with, and this might also be different from the left side to the right side, is that if we go forward, if we get some kind of a blocking or pinching sensation on the front side of the ankle or up on the shin bone. Now, if this is the case, you might be dealing with some kind of a mechanical issue inside of the ankle, but in most cases, this issue is quite easy for you to fix. In order to have a look at whether this might be the problem or not, we want to go into the second assessment, which is simply the seiza position. So all I'm going to do is I'm on the floor, so I'm going to extend my wrist backwards, and I'm simply going to see if I can sit my butt onto my heels comfortably with my foot fully extended, and I can sit in this position without getting any kind of a stretching or pinching sensation. Now, if you can't sit in this position properly without huge discomfort or a very hefty stretching sensation, that might mean that we need to work a bit more on this particular range of motion. Now, let's say that you don't get any kind of stretching sensation in this position. It might still be beneficial in your case, especially if you need extra range of motion in the ankle because you do certain activities like Olympic weightlifting or anything like that, where you need a very good ability for your knees to travel across your toes. So you need a lot of dorsiflexion. It might be beneficial to get even more range of motion than just being able to sit seated onto the floor. So for the first exercise, we're simply going to do a seiza stretch, which is the first assessment we did, the second assessment we did for the ankle. You always want to start off with this exercise before jumping into the dorsiflexion exercise. So what we can do is, if you already have stretch in this position, is just work from this position. But in my case, for instance, I don't really have much of a stretching sensation in this position. So what you might want to do in that case is you might want to grab something that is obvious, not too hard, something soft, but that can elevate your toes up a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my toes onto this elevation in order for me to sink down a bit deeper into my ankles. So now I can create more of a stretch on the front side of the ankle. Also adjust the amount of weight you put on the back of your ankle as needed. So ideally, I would have something in front of me, such as a chair or a box, that I can put some of my weight towards in case if the stretch is too intense, if I sit all the way back, which in my case it is. So I'm looking for about a 3 or 4 out of 10 in this stretch. What you want to do is hold the stretch first for 90 seconds, and then we're going to go into a Pails and Rails contraction. So I'm going to imagine that the 90 seconds have passed. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the Pails contraction. So I'm going to try to do this motion into the mat. So I'm going to try to extend my feet into the floor. I'm trying to drive my toes that way. So what I'm doing now is I'm starting to get tension in the place that was stretching initially. So I was having a stretch at the front of my shin bone, but I'm now recreating tension at the front of my shin bone. So the stretch is falling off, but I'm creating tension instead. And I'm going to hold this for about 30 seconds. After those 30 seconds have passed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to try to lift my toes off of the cushion. I'm not going to be able to do that because this is too deep of a position, but what I can do is try to put as little weight onto the cushion as I can. So I'm trying to lift my toes off of the cushion right now. So I'm getting more stretching sensation on the front side of the shin bone now, and I'm starting to get a little bit of tension into my calf here. And I'm also going to hold this for 30 seconds. So for the second exercise, we're actually going to work directly onto dorsiflexion now that we've created more space on the front side or anterior side of the ankle. What we're going to need for this is, ideally, we'd have something to support on, so I could use something like 2 sticks, or I could put myself in the middle of a barbell rack or anything like that. Another option we have is I can just simply get into position. If I have the mobility to do so, I could just lean my hands onto the floor and use that as a base of support. But in this case, the most comfortable and easiest one to do in my case would be with 2 sticks, and the other one would be with a barbell, and the other one would be inside of a rack. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to start leaning forward into my left ankle until I start getting a very slight stretch at the back side of my ankle here. Also, if you're getting too much of a stretch on your, in this case on my right hip, all I would do is just bring this knee slightly closer and then fall back down into the position. What we want to make sure we don't do here is let the heel come off the floor. So I currently have a very light stretch. This usually won't be too intense of a stretch. I have a very light stretch on the back side of my ankle in my Achilles region. And I'm just going to hold the stretch for about 60 to 90 seconds first. When I'm done holding the stretch, what I'm going to do next is go into the pail rail contraction. So what I'm going to do for the pail rail contraction is I'm going to start by, I'm going to try to do this motion, but I'm not going to be able to. So I'm going to try to drive my toes into the floor. And I'm trying to create tension now into my calf. And I'm potentially getting a little bit of stretch on the front side, but mostly creating tension on the calf. I'm going to keep pushing my toes into the floor the whole time. So I'm progressively getting more and more and more tension into my calf right now. And then what I'm going to do after is I'm going to brace very well with the sticks now, because this one is a bit more difficult. I'm going to try to imagine that my foot is on a scale, and I'm going to try to lift my toes off of the scale. So now I'm getting more stretching sensation onto my Achilles tendon and my calf. So the tension in my calf is gone. I'm getting stretch sensation now in my calf. And I'm also trying to create tension on the front side of my shin bone right now. So I have tension in my tibialis anterior, and I have stretching sensation in my Achilles on the back side. And I'm also going to hold this for 30 seconds. If you can't lift your toes off the floor, that is completely fine and normal. All you're trying to do is try to imagine that you try to put as little weight through the front of your foot as you possibly can. Now, after you've completed those 2 exercises, you want to go back to the initial test to see if you've made any noticeable improvements. So once again, I'm going to go straight for the second test now. I'm going to use my wrist, my fist and my thumb. I'm going to put it against the box in between my big toe and the box. And I'm going to see if I can now more comfortably reach forward. So I'm checking if not only if there's a range of motion difference, but in my case, it feels like my ankle feels a lot more comfortable in this position. Also, I no longer have any kind of a restriction on the front side of the ankle, and all I feel is a slight stretch on the back side of the ankle, and that's about it.